Hello, ladies and gentlemen. This is Rupam Chakrabarti, and welcome to another episode of the Nordic Academy show. My guest today is Gabriel Pellicer Aycinena. Please correct me if I'm wrong
No, that was perfect.
on the
That was
pronunciation.
impressive.
Okay, fantastic. Gabriel is an applied behavioral scientist and strategist. He got his bachelor's degree in psychology from University Francisco Marroquin. He did his master's in behavioral science and economics from the University of Warwick. He worked as a nudge analyst in the Warwick Behavioral Insights team. He worked
Yeah.
also as a professor of psychology at University Francisco Marroquin. Gabriel also works with corporates to help them design and develop strategies to generate campaigns that solve client problems with high level of differentiation and deep consumer understanding. He has also moderated focus groups, one-on-one, in-depth personal interviews, and ethnographic studies in English and Spanish across Central America, physically and virtually. Gabe, it's so nice to see you. Welcome to the show.
No, first of all, thanks for the invitation. I was looking forward to this podcast. Well, since you mentioned it, so I'm just really happy to be here. And I have to say, your Spanish was spot on. That was really impressive.
Uh,
it was
I I
it was
I
much
kind
better
of
than many people here in Guatemala. So,
I
congrats.
got you. I actually Googled it how to pronounce that. So
Oh
that's the
well,
secret sauce.
but still very impressive. So, congrats.
My pleasure. I was, I was afraid if I could pronounce that correctly, because as an Indian, I have my accent, and
Sure.
the Indian accent doesn't really align well with the Spanish accent. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? So two different continents altogether. But anyway, I'm glad that I at least scored something.
No, it was
There.
spot on. It was spot on.
Yes. So, Gabe, as a prelude, I would like to share with you and the audience, a little background story that might, lay the bedrock for today's discussion. Um, so, at Nordic Academy, we work with a lot of, fast jobbers, freshmen, students just out of college, and during pandemic, most of them. So Nordic Academy, what we do is we basically, train students and map them with companies. That's what we do in a nutshell. So during pandemic, most of our students they got onboarded digitally, virtually, online. So everything was online. Now, while doing so, we figured out a few challenges that our students are facing, and when we dug deep, we found these are universal challenges, not just our students. All the fast jobbers who are onboarding online are facing these challenges and problems. And I'm not an expert in this field, but I want best for my students, and at the same time, I would like other first jobbers to benefit from these. Also, from the other side of the table, if you are a company, it might be a challenge for you as well that you are facing. Because if you are hiring someone, you are not getting the best out of that person. That's a challenge, that's a problem for you. So it's a two-way problem, two-way challenge that both the employees and the employers are facing. So I thought of, why not talk to someone who is an expert in this field, who knows thousand times more about these things. And you know what? When I dug deep, I figured out the problem is not so about the technical competency. It's more about the human behavior and psychology. It's more about that. So I I thought of getting in touch with you and request you, for our discussion. And you have been generous enough to respond to my call, and accepted my invitation. So I was really looking forward to it, and I am sure this will be an amazing conversation. So I'm really looking forward to it. And so yeah, that was a prelude, a quick prelude, that I thought of. It's required to set the tone for the discussion for the rest of the podcast. Um, so I, as I was, doing my research, I came across a lot of challenges, but not all the challenges we can cover in this discussion. So
Sure.
I thought of, why not shortlist the, most important challenges that, according to me, we can definitely have a follow-up podcast covering the rest. Um, so one common thing that I, figured out or observed is, a challenge that students or the first jobbers are facing is loneliness. When you're working from home, all of a sudden, it's a complete different world. You are coming from a student life, you're stepping into professional world, so two different worlds, and it's already a big challenge. And that to encounter in a complete virtual world, it's according to me, it's a bigger challenge. So is this, you think, a serious issue that, we should be concerned about, or it's just a, passing thing, it will get sorted?
Sure. Yeah. So the timing for this podcast is actually very very interesting, just because I'm actually transitioning from uh, I'm just like, changing jobs at the moment. So I'm going to start a new job, which is going to be totally remote, 100% remote. So I'm going to start next month. So the timing has been very spot on, because even though I'm not like a first jobber, as you say, I'm still like going to a new environment with new people and stuff. And I have been working remotely for, well, since the pandemic, so March 2020. So I've been like in both sides of the coin, if you will. But yeah, it is a big challenge just for everyone, first jobbers and just veterans as well. And it can be very, as you said, it can be very serious, because, well, first of all, we can take this and like from the psychological, biological perspective, and then from the cultural perspective as well. There's this great book called Social by Matthew Lieberman, and he talks about how basically, well, the gist of it is how our brains are just wired to connect, and how we as a human species evolved to be social, and we evolved to like be together with other people. We evolved to make friendships, to belong in groups, and so on and so forth. So basically, that translates to the way our brain very anatomically and very primitively works from the start. So since we go from this very, I don't know, controlled environment of being in school, being in college, being with different friends, and just go into the virtual world, be just going remotely, it can be very daunting, I suppose. And the consequences, if they're not managed correctly, can be very, yeah, it can be serious. I was looking yesterday at some statistics, and for example, 2 out of 3 people um, said that the benefit of going to the office, more than just being productive, is just like seeing other people. When you go into the office and you go to drink some water, you're drinking coffee, or at least Guatemala is very coffee centric culture. So you just go and have coffee with someone in the middle of the morning or mid afternoon. So it's those like very social moments that are very critical to just like the whole job experience, um, which are not necessarily part of the job in a formal sense, but are very important to the person and to the company as well. Um, And then I was looking at another statistic and says that only 34%, so it's what, 65%, 66% of respondents say they feel lonely when they're not in the office. So they feel lonely if they're working remotely. Um, and those statistics are very, I mean, they give us like a very clear panorama of what can happen to someone if they just like start working from home with no like office infrastructure around them, because that can translate eventually to some burnout, that can translate into some sort of depression, or some other not ideal mental conditions for everyone, especially first jobbers, especially if they don't have that support system around them, if that makes any sense.
Yes, it
So is
does.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's definitely something companies and people around the world should take into account.
Yeah, you mentioned about a few, data sets and some statistics. So, and I do understand that, we, in last 18 months or so, we have done some substantial research, probably, in field of that. But do we have the complete data set, or do we, can we confidently say that we have the full picture before pass this judgment? Okay, this is a serious issue and we should be, it should be, dealt with utmost seriousness. Have we reached that point yet? What do you think? Or shall we wait for a few more months or years before we uh, consider it as a serious issue?
Yeah, I think that's a very interesting question because I can't remember. I think it was Satya Nadella who said that it was the first or the biggest work from home experiment ever. So it's very recent phenomena because, for example, before I started, well, before the pandemic, we had like home office as a benefit, like every other week or something. But it was very low key. It wasn't the common thing. It wasn't very popular around different companies. And then out of the sudden, everyone just went home. So we have like a limited set of data. Just it's been like what 18 months to 2 years, depends on the country. But so far, I think we have enough information to make some inferences. But I would say, yeah, we do definitely need more. Um, I don't know, maybe one more year,
Mhm.
um, in order to get enough data and get some strategies going on to mitigate whatever needs to be mitigated.
Yeah, before we pass a conclusive judgment on that. So the jury
Totally.
is still out on that.
Yeah,
uh,
even because I was researching, and even like Dan Ariely, just like he was such a brilliant man, but even sometimes when you see his like different perspectives and other people as well, not just him, like they sort of change and fluctuate uh, around time. So I don't think we can just like definitely be certain about one specific topic or one specific conclusion, but we can like have some sort of gist around the working from home and its consequences, both positive and negative. Because
mhm.
I'm the first person to tell you that I love working remotely. So
If you ask 100 people, 100 out of 100 probably will say, I would like to work from home, at least some form of it. If not 100% work from home, at least maybe a
yeah,
hybrid model, somewhere in that line. But see, though we said that the jury is still out on that, but we cannot deny the fact it's an issue that we should not completely brush aside.
totally.
Mental health and loneliness and all these things, these are not myths.
No, they're
These
not.
we
Yeah,
can, these are not myths. So can companies do something to help employees out? I'm talking about, see, this is applicable for not just the fast jobbers, this is applicable for everyone.
totally.
But I am more concerned about fast jobbers because they haven't got started yet. They're not strong enough. They have just they don't know even how to crawl, and so they are very vulnerable segment. So if you're for example, you have enough experience, you are strong enough to take the blow. But these guys, they are too vulnerable to deal with these things. So
Yeah.
as a company, can they do something to address these issues.
Yeah, totally. And I think well, it goes back to understanding first of all that human psychology, as I mentioned, how we work and how our brains work, because at the very core of our existence, we're very primal. So once you understand that, you can work upon it, and then there's other different things you can do. First of all, second of all, understand culture, both like global culture, what's going on around the globe, the country specific cultures as well, and then company culture. So it just goes from like understanding psychology, understanding human being, understanding how the world is shaping, and then just going and narrowing it down to like country culture and company culture, and just creating a very um, remote first company culture, if you will, because I have noticed that companies that transition from being fully on site to fully remote are doing differently than companies that just started off being fully remote and then just like stayed that way, just because the dynamics change and how people adapt change. But regarding your question for first jobbers, I think companies can be very, once you understand the whole pipeline of cultural differences and like human psychology, you can actually leverage your company culture to accommodate first jobbers. For example, creating a company full of communication. I think communication is one of those things that are easily lost when you go fully remote. Um, just just imagine your first job. You go into the office, because I'm assuming it was like a, or my first job was going to the office, and it was so daunting. You don't know anyone. You don't know who to talk to, who not to talk to, who to ask questions, and just that in a remote setting is even worse because you're just staring at a screen. Maybe you're using Slack or Microsoft Teams, and you don't know what's going on. So the communication aspect of any company has to be spot on, especially in a virtual remote setting for new jobbers. Because we as humans are very averse to uncertainty. It's called uncertainty aversion in behavioral science. But once you start communicating, you start like actually engaging anyone, especially first jobbers. You can like mitigate that uncertainty and help them like feel more at home,
Mhm,
uh,
mhm.
if you will, in this new setting. Just so enabling
Communication.
communication. Yeah,
Yeah, like you said, communication is the key. See, we, most of the companies they have some sort of communication channels, going these days, be it Slack or Microsoft Teams or anything. Even some companies I know they use WhatsApp for their, which is perfectly okay. As long as the communication is working, it's fine. Uh, but there is one thing, it is one thing to have a communication channel. It's a completely different ball game altogether to have a proper communication sort of setup, where you address the issues of your employees. So what I'm trying to say is, um, how, what companies can do proactively to engage. Because I'm talking from a fast jobber's perspective. If I'm a I just got a job, this is how it works in India, at least.
sure.
I got my offer letter. I got my email ID. I got onboarded on Slack or Microsoft Teams, and they added me to the group. And every morning they have these team bonding sessions or stand-ups, where the seniors talk about certain things, and we get our own 30 seconds slot to speak about ourselves. And in the first meeting, probably I introduce myself, and from there it gets started. So every day, 30 seconds, actually I'm actively engaging with the team. 30 seconds out of 8 hours I'm actively engaging. Rest of the time, either I am just probably answering to my seniors queries, or I'm listening to them. That is not a dialogue, that is a monologue,
No,
right?
true.
So what can companies do to actively engage? uh, this is for me, it's really important, because you can say, okay, I have the communication channel. If you have to, if someone comes and says, what you are doing to take care of the mental health, or address the loneliness factor of your employees, what you are doing to engage them, you can say, I have a communication channel where we exchange highs and hellos there. So uh, is that enough, or we can do more?
I would say that's the minimum you can do. That's like the baseline minimum any company should do. Just like enable conversation channels and just enable this. Like as you said, like in the morning you log in, you talk to your boss or whoever, but that's very like work centered. So I think companies should enable, I don't know, for example, half an hour every other day for like talking stuff that it's not necessarily job related.
Hmm.
So it's not like,
Exactly.
hi, I'm having difficulty with such and such project, but it's more like, hey, yesterday I went for an ice cream, or as probably a lame example, but just
Hmm.
enable these like sort of small spaces for like actual communication that it's not work related, because that's sort of mirroring what would happen either way in the office. Like in the office,
Hmm.
you're just there with another person. You would go and be like, "Hey, what's up? Uh, how's it going? Yesterday I did this. How did your evening go? I heard you were going on a date. I heard the famous I don't know office gossip that just goes on every other day." So just mirroring those like sort of spaces for small teams that are not necessarily just like task oriented can be very helpful in integrating
Hmm.
just everyone around, which is
maybe we
very
can
important.
maybe we can create separate channels on Slack where we do not talk about work at all.
Exactly. Exactly.
It's just a pure entertainment, fun, and non-work dialogues or conversations.
Yeah, Slack
And
channels and just like spaces, just like actual one-on-one
mhm.
non-work related spaces. I think that those are the
Absolutely. And for that, I feel that, uh, often what happens, the company management, the top layer, it's really difficult for them to stay in touch with the new hires, on a daily basis. So
sure.
the managers, the team leaders, they have to, play an active and proactive role, to make this happen. And they probably, the management can coach the managers how to sort of create these spaces that you are talking about, where fun things can happen. But like you said, probably we cannot mirror it completely, but at least we can, get 50% or 60. If we can attain 50%, that's the job done for me, at least at this phase.
Exactly. No, as I said, I think it winds down to the managers, not the high level
Hmm.
CEO, for example, because he's overseeing so many people. But for example, if a manager has, I don't know, five people that respond to him, like just have those like social spaces, if you will, for each
Hmm.
individual small, like five-person team, for example. So it
Hmm.
bounds down to the different little like teams around the office. But that has to come, obviously, it has to be an initiative that it's supported by high level executives in a bigger company. But it
Hmm.
does bound to the manager. And because one of the things we've noticed in this pandemic is the role of the middle manager is changing so much. Because before it was very hands on, very, in some cases, it was very micromanaging, but then out of the sudden, everyone was out of the office. So middle managers were just like left out of the loop in many ways. But I think one of the things that has changed is that the managers are now more responsible for just tackling down, just like focusing on their own team to enable them to do other stuff remotely instead of just like macromanaging or but their role is more of these kind of initiatives that help build cohesion and the company culture.
So maybe special training of managers needed. Instead of starting at the grassroots level, we can start with the managers, because they are the ones that will convey the message. They are the one that will keep this team together or build this team. So
Totally.
it's important to coach the managers before they coach the first jobbers or the entry level employees.
Yeah,
um,
totally.
yeah. Now, I will now move on to the second challenge that I observed students or entry level employees facing. um, that is, definitely, it's a country specific issue. In India, we have lot of people, and but unfortunately, in in most of the cases, we do not simply have a proper workstation that we can work from at home.
Sure.
A very few privileged sort of chunk can afford that, or even can think of having a dedicated proper workstation or setup that is calm, that is peaceful, and with all the amenities. Most of the times, people are working from maybe their bedroom, or sometimes from the drawing room, or from balcony, or or terrace somewhere, some makeshift workstation. Um, so when you're working from those makeshift workstations, a common problem is distraction. You are you are getting a lot of noise, you are listening to a lot of things, and it's simply distracting. A lot of distractions happening surrounding around you. So is there a way, because I know for sure, I have read this book by Richard Thaler, Nudge, where he mentioned about choice architectures and all.
Sure.
I'm sure there is a way to create a designer, create an architecture, or design your surroundings or design your workstation that will just create or trigger the perfect nudges, and help you be more productive. It's beneficial for both the first jobbers or employees as well as companies, because as a company you want your people to have to work from a productive environment. So is there a way to do that?
Sure.
Probably it's an abstract question, but
No, yeah, it
it's
is. I think no, but it's a great question. It's a great question. I guess it's one of those challenges that has been just like messing around with different companies. But I guess
mm,
like I'm gonna go like a step behind, and I guess distractions are a challenge that all companies face, whether people are on site or remote.
mm,
Because when I started my previous job, I remember going to the office. It was a beautiful office. Like it was really, really nice. But it was open office, like an open environment. So it was like I had my desk, and like the person next to me had their desk, but there was no division. There was nothing. So if somebody was laughing all the way the other end, I could just hear them laugh. If somebody walked by, I could just like watch them like walk by. Somebody was drinking water, I could just like, so distractions were everywhere, even if I were in an office. Um, and for me, which I get easily distracted, I would just like grab my stuff and just go to a little like separate area in the office where nobody ever went to, because I couldn't really focus. So what I'm trying to say is distractions are a big challenge, whether you're on site or off site. But
mm,
it is very true that when you're working remotely, you have these challenges where you're working next to your sister, your kid, your dog, your parents, your spouse, or whatever. And that can bring other types of distractions. Um, so definitely in an ideal world, the company would just provide like the infrastructure, but that is obviously not the case
Hmm.
in
Not
many.
every, not all the companies can afford that, right?
Yeah, totally, and it makes total sense. So yeah, that's the ideal world, but that's not
Hmm.
very feasible. Um, but I do feel like people, once they're working remotely, they can set like a separate little corner. If it's their room, they can set like a specific place to work that is not like their bed or their sofa, just because that provides them with a sense of um, stability in a way. You know, this is my work corner, even though it might be like 1 meter by 1 meter. You know, that's my workstation in a way. Um, Other kind of stuff like rituals, for example. Just going off to a walk every morning before starting work can like really help you set your mindset before work. The use of music, for example, having specific focus music can help you like mitigate other stuff going around. You can buy some very expensive noise canceling headphones or just like very cheap, random off brand headphones as well. That, but in a way, they will always block out the different distractions. But I think at the end, it boils down to like having some certain structure in what you can actually do. Um, you might not have like a specific room, but you can have like a
Hmm.
specific corner. You might not have like a commute, but you have like a certain ritual that helps you get in certain mindset before going into the office, before starting working.
Hmm.
Having a delimited specific like 9 to 5 so schedule that can help a lot.
Hmm.
Doing other stuff like I don't know if you've heard about Pomodoro, which are like study sessions. There are 25 minutes of intense focus and then 5 minutes of
Hmm.
distractions. That can help a lot, especially in a very hectic place. And you can combine different things. For example, you start in the morning, 8 a.m. You go for a walk, then you sit down in your specific corner with your music and start one pomodoro, and then you focus for 25 minutes. And that kind of stuff would sound trivial, but if you add it up, like if you add all of it together, it can really help to mitigate these distractions. There are also apps, for example, that help you concentrate even more. There's one called Forest, I believe, that sort of gamifies the concentration and the productivity aspect of it. So if you break your productivity, your little forest gets chopped down. If you're able to concentrate longer, you grow more trees and stuff. So there are different tools, apps, and different like little things you can do around your certain specific um, work environment that you can actually help and build that choice architecture
You
to
actually
work.
mentioned about a very interesting thing. Rituals, having rituals is important, you said. Uh, Probably it's easier for someone like you to, because you know how this game works, right? You know how this ritual game works, but for someone who has no idea how this thing works, even, setting up these small habits, these small rituals is really difficult. So how to get started? Because I understand what you're trying to you're trying to say. You're suggesting, sort of differentiate your professional sort of world with your personal world in a way,
Yeah,
so that when you are getting into that zone, you are you have no strings attached to the personal world. You can solely focus on that. That is the reason why you're suggesting to have a separate, workstation, separate corner for work. Do not work from your couch, do not work from your bed,
yeah,
because that attaches, that is attached, that primes probably your personal life.
exactly.
But I'm more interested about the ritual thing that you said. um, So how to get started, how to build maybe some basic rituals that might help. I do not want to go to an advanced stage, but maybe some fundamental things, some basic things that they can do to get started.
Yeah, so the building of rituals is very interesting from a very deep psychological perspective. Rituals bound you together. Like many groups have rituals that just keep them together. That's basically the evolutionary purpose of rituals. It's just like bringing people together. So that's one of the things that company culture, company managers can integrate into their own offering. Just like bring rituals um, to their employees. Like maybe it's as we mentioned, every morning we have this little 20-minute like non-work related session or 30-minute very intense work thing. Those kind of rituals can help a lot of people, but also the off camera rituals, as I mentioned, just having walking around for 20 minutes before going to work, walking around 20 minutes after logging off the computer, um, having lunch at a certain hour. That kind of rituals just bring stability, and they're not nothing complicated if you think about it. It's just like very set in stone with certain flexibility, of course, but very set things you can do before and after work, or having like a mid morning snack. Um, I don't know, but it's those sort of tiny, very simple things you can do that just helps you set your mind in a different way. As you said, you can prime yourself to work more, um, or be more efficient, or just avoid distractions. But it's very simple things, very simple rituals you can engage in that
Mhm.
really help.
And would you suggest this Atomic Habits by James Clear to the students, or
Oh yeah,
the first jobbers?
of course.
What's your take on that?
It's a
Because
great book.
he,
Yeah,
yeah, he talked about setting up rituals and developing habits extensively in that book. So probably they can read that book
yeah.
and
They should totally read that book. There's another one called "Learning How to Learn" by Barbara Oakley,
okay.
which it is obviously tailored towards education, but there's so many things you can take out of that book that can help you in your professional life, especially if you're starting out. Because and there's another one by BJ Fogg. I can't remember the name. It's called Tiny Habits. I can't remember.
Hmm.
Um, but those kind of books before you start your professional life can really help you create good habits that are gonna like make your professional life even better in the sense.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
at the end, they're very simple, cost effective, and time effective ways of just like getting through your day, and that would work for the rest of your life, regardless if you're on site, off site, studying, doing another master's, getting a new job. It's going to help you regardless.
And probably companies can even as an onboarding in the onboarding kit can include
Sure.
some books like these, right?
Yeah, like employee training and employee onboarding can really help because, for example, I think the statistic is employees need around 6 months to really get accustomed to their new job.
Hmm.
I think that's the don't quote me on it, but I think that's around uh,
Hmm.
the time it takes. But it can really be shortened by efficient employee training and employee onboarding. So, for example, if whoever is in charge of onboarding really tackles these problems and teaches new jobbers about rituals and effective productivity devices,
Hmm.
tools, and habits, that can really help first jobbers. And the book can be very proactive if the person is into reading and actually doing their uh, being prepared. That could be an amazing thing to
Hmm.
start with.
Yeah. That takes me to my next open question. It's It's another challenge that uh, most of the companies are complaining about. Also, the employees, the entry level employees, and it's regarding the difficulty integrating to the company culture that the fast jobbers are facing. Um, at the very beginning, you mentioned about small little things. It has nothing to do with work. Maybe having chit chat, having going for a coffee, spending 5 minutes with your senior, rubbing shoulders with a experienced coder if you're a programmer. Those small little things help. But now they're not getting that opportunity, and
Sure.
it's really difficult, like you mentioned, to mirror that environment in the virtual world. I know we are getting closer to a metaverse, but we're not there yet, right? It will take some time. So it's difficult to mirror. Now, I think a company has its own culture. Every company
Yeah,
has its
everyone.
culture,
Yeah, or they should.
and every company has its own culture.
Yeah.
And now it's really difficult uh, to for a fast jobber to buy into that, uh, virtually. You are not spending, you have not gone to your office yet, so it's really difficult. So how do companies deal with that? Is there a way, or it's just something, it's a trade-off that we have to live with?
Yeah, I think it is definitely very, very hard, very difficult for companies and first jobbers alike to mimic the culture into this virtual setting. I totally agree. And there's definitely things that companies can do to mitigate these challenges.
Mhm,
Well, as I said, like if you managed, oh, well, first of all, like you have to understand who you're talking to. As I mentioned, you have to understand the psychology behind the person. You have to understand the cultural zeitgeist that's going around the world, and like every different country has different ways of doing stuff. But as a whole, this new like tech focused, very creative, very new type of employee that we're facing nowadays,
mhm,
it basically responds to three different things, which are autonomy, purpose, and mastery. So those are the kinds that you can mimic in a virtual setting in order
mhm,
to create this new um, virtual culture, if you will. First of all, autonomy. I think that's the easiest part, just because since you're at home, you're wherever you are, you have certain level of autonomy that you couldn't have before in just in an office. But you can actually create the sense of purpose, the sense of mastery for different employees, which is basically what everyone is searching for in a job. If for example,
mhm,
um, and that's very hard to actually come across, as you mentioned. And I think it bottles down to having this culture that it's flexible, that enables communication, but enables safe communication. It's not just like talking for talking's sake, but it's actually allowing your first jobbers to like have a voice, asking them directly, like, what do you think? What don't you think? Giving them the specific space, allowing them to fail at first, because that gives them a sense of like psychological safety.
mhm,
Especially because they're first jobbers, they're expected to fail in a way. Sounds very horrible, but it's sort of the expectation. You know they're learning. You know they're doing their best. You know they're not used to this, so you expect them to fail, and you tell them, okay, it's fine. Just don't just learn from your mistakes,
mhm,
and that can be done in a virtual way in a very simple manner. As I mentioned before at the beginning um, of the conversation, first jobbers are filled with uncertainty, and just being framing your communication in a way that mitigates uncertainty can really go a long way to integrating these new employees. And as we talked in the previous question, just these rituals help you structure your world and your day in a very predictable manner, and that helps you mitigate that uncertainty that's gonna like maybe stifle new jobbers and not allow them to be in their full potential, if you will.
Mhm.
Um, and then other more fun stuff, if you will, just happy hours, even though they're virtual, just like hanging out on a Friday with your team, drinking a beer, talking random stuff, um, and then just modeling what you want from your first jobbers. That I think that can be a very powerful message. We are social creatures, as I mentioned, and we learn by watching others. So if the
Mhm.
middle manager or the manager is allowed to fail as well, if the manager is allowed to talk freely, if the manager is um, laughing, that can have a great impact on the first jobbers as well. Just because they will see them, even if it's through a camera, even if it's
Mhm.
through like a Slack conversation or thread, they can be like, okay, it's safe to say stuff. It's safe to fail. It's safe to express what I'm feeling or my doubts or ask questions. So I think it. I don't want to be like a broken record, but I think it goes down to culture and what the middle manager does for the first jobbers.
Yeah, you mentioned a very important thing. For a manager, it's really important. That's what I feel. It's really important to ensure that your team members feel comfortable failing in front of you.
Yeah,
They should feel comfortable, be vulnerable in front of you. They should be, comfortable to show their vulnerability in front of you. If they if you can win that trust, that is like, half battle won. uh, you
totally.
know m- that is really important. And you mentioned about autonomy, mastery, and purpose. If you don't mind, I would like to dive a bit deeper in
You sure?
those three things. It's really important. These are just three words, but they carry a lot of weight. They're really important thing that companies can probably try and integrate into their system. So how uh, it actually works? How can a company or a management promote these things, starting with autonomy? Uh,
Sure. Yeah, these three things are the basic building blocks behind motivation nowadays. They're going to go farther than money or well extrinsic motivation. So these are very intrinsic, very um, human
mhm.
motivational building blocks, if you will. And you mentioned what was it autonomy?
Yeah.
Yeah, so autonomy, I think it's the easiest one, just because we're in a remote setting, as I mentioned. People are just doing their stuff, and you have to be able to trust your employee to do what he's supposed to do. Um, w- However, within a certain uh, certain
Mhm.
thing, to do
Uh,
how he's gonna perform.
mhm. Mhm.
But autonomy goes in sense of liberty and just like having people trust me to do my job. So it can start little by little, just like, hey, do this little thing and just give it to me at the end of the day. I'm not gonna bug you about it. I'm not gonna like be on top of you. Just like deliver it at the end of the day. If you have any questions, my philosophical
Mhm.
door, it's always open. And then he's gonna be able to do that small thing, and then you grow a little bit bigger because he was ready. He knows how to do it. It's his second assignment, but just give them the tools, give them the certainty, as we mentioned, allow them to fail in a way, allow them to build trust, to ask questions, and little by little, just build them the autonomy to do bigger and bigger stuff without just like haggling down. And I think, again, that's the role of the middle manager, just like building autonomy slowly but surely, especially for first jobbers who don't have the experience or the know-how to just build big projects, but you can just build it small, little by little.
Hmm. Hmm. That's kind of a guided freedom.
Guided
Uh,
freedom. Yeah, that you said it better than I could. Guided freedom.
that reminded me of a phrase coined by Richard Thaler, libertarian paternalism. Though it's completely
Sure.
different context, right? It's kind of a guided freedom. You are not, you are doing just enough to help them out, but
Yeah.
you are not doing, enough to make them feel you are intruding
Yeah. So you
or
set
you
the
are forcing
boundaries.
yourself.
Yeah, exactly. You set the boundaries, and you're like, okay, from inside this space, you can do whatever you want, as long as you
Yeah,
deliver
yeah,
your
yeah.
results.
Yeah,
Uh,
absolutely. That's all I need, as long as you can deliver, I'm fine with that. But
and
I
if
got
you
your back.
have any questions, just let me know,
Hmm.
because that's
Let
what we mentioned before. Trust. If you can build
trust.
trust in your
And
team,
yeah,
they can do whatever.
and if you fail, don't worry, I got your back. Don't worry to fail in front of me. I'll not, scold you. If
Yeah,
you
exactly.
fail, that's okay. That's
I will
fine.
teach you. I won't
Absolutely
scold
okay.
you. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And actually, Dan Pink, I was watching one of his
Yeah.
TED talk.
Those
uh,
three are from Dan Pink's
yeah,
drive.
he mentioned about, an experiment by, Sam Clarksburg,
Sure.
and where the Canadian scientist of Princeton University, where, he kind of proved that carrot and stick approach doesn't work for 21st century jobs. It
Exactly.
used to work for 20th century, which was more like labor intensive jobs,
Yeah,
but
like
no,
if you're very set in your job is very repetitive and you have to do the same thing over and over again, it might work. But for like a programmer, advertising, consulting, it just doesn't work. It's just going to stifle the
mm,
creativity. It's going to stifle the work at the end.
anything to do with cognitive ability, it will not work in a
Exactly.
pressure cooker situation. You
Exactly.
have to give him some freedom, some liberty, some kind of autonomy to,
Yeah.
for them to perform.
And especially because if you instill fear in your teams, what fear does, it just basically it paralyzes you or makes you run away.
Mm,
That's very primitive things. So once you establish trust, you eliminate fear, and then you can start working on the autonomy. You can start working on the purpose, and you can start working on mastery. But the building block of everything is just like this safe, uh, yeah, psychologically safe environment where people can just thrive.
mm, mm. But it's kind of a conundrum. It's kind of a trade-off that we have to probably do here, because we talk about autonomy, talk about freedom, everything is fine. Uh, but that reminds me of an experiment. It was done with a bunch of Harvard students. It was mentioned by, in this book, Predictable Irrational by Dan Riley.
Yeah,
He mentioned about this experiment in that book. He said that by default, all human beings are soft cheaters. Intrinsically, we are cheaters.
yeah,
So if you provide the, environment where we can cheat, we will cheat.
yeah, totally,
So it's one thing to let them, walk, give them all the freedom in the world, and but it's another thing, if you lose complete control, because here we are talking about the fast jobbers who are just stepping into the professional world,
yeah,
coming from a completely different world. So if you show them too much freedom, probably that might backfire.
totally.
So
No, that's why.
it's
Yeah, that's why you need to set boundaries. Like from here to here, you can do
yeah,
whatever, but those are the boundaries. You can't like the minimum boundary is not cheat. For example, that's
yeah.
just the
It's a very thin line that you have to draw, and the managers and team leaders, they have to play sort of a very critical role to ensure that line stays there. You provide just enough freedom, just enough autonomy, for them to bloom and grow. But it should not be wild, wild west.
No, totally.
Uh,
No, you need boundaries. That's why you need structure
yeah,
in your world, because
yeah,
structure gives you the ability to like thrive. If there's no structure, it's just chaos, and you can just like cheat and do whatever.
yeah. Absolutely.
For example, with
Uh,
my students, whenever I give them like a task or something, I'm just like, don't plagiarize. That's the minimum boundary. If you're gonna, you can use any source you want to a certain extent. Just don't plagiarize,
mhm,
because that's the minimum threshold. Don't
yeah.
plagiarize. In an office, it could be don't cheat, don't lie, don't steal. You know
Mhm.
what I mean? Like there, you have to set the boundaries straight, and then
But
within those
sometimes it's
boundaries.
really difficult to say those boundaries in black and white. It's
Yeah,
sometimes really really difficult because the truth lies probably somewhere in between. It's in the gray zone. So it's sometimes really difficult to set those boundary. And But it's probably a subject that can be debated, and probably
yeah,
we can spend a day talking over this and
sure,
arguing
yeah,
and debating on this. Uh, but I will now quickly move on to the last point that I have.
sure,
It's LinkedIn has become a hot bait for for a debate on this thing. Remote work, 100% remote work versus 100% work from office, or hybrid. Where you stand in this sort of debate?
I think I love remote work. I think if somebody just made me go back to an office, I would throw a tantrum. I love remote work. I love working from home because I am right next to my dog, right next to my cat. I can just drink my coffee in the morning and just like have that sort of thing. But I do think that for most people, the answer is a hybrid. Most people do need some kind of work from home days and then going to the office just because it allows you to connect, it allows you to meet new people, do other stuff, share information,
Hmm.
um, see different walls. Because once you're in your house for like I don't know 14 days straight, you wanna like really wanna go run
Hmm.
away. So I do think for most people it lies in the middle. I think it's sort of a hybrid
Hmm.
um, thing, hybrid work arrangement. I think that's the most.
But it's easier said than done, because to have this hybrid model up and running, there are some technical challenges, because now we
Totally.
are talking about setting up two workstations,
Yeah.
to infrastructure. Those who are probably those who are using laptops, it probably works for them. But it's not as simple as that. Just It's not just
Yeah.
about having a laptop. It's
Yeah.
much bigger than that.
It is obviously very much job dependent.
Yeah, it's job dependent,
And
exactly.
totally, and very personality dependent as well, because an introvert and an extrovert are going to behave totally different in a work setting.
Absolutely, yeah,
So it does
yeah.
depend, and industry dependent as well. There's a lot of factors going on, but I do think technology nowadays allows you to eases some of the burden. For example, because I saw it at my current job, which is a advertising agency, a lot of
Mhm,
the designers were sent home with the big, the big desktops, and they were like, carrying them around. And for them, it's not feasible to go like every like once a week back and forth with the big desktop. Whilst I just have a laptop and just put it in my bag and just
uh,
go wherever. And then, for example, my sister, she works. She's an engineer, but she has to go physically to the factory. So for her, like it's not always feasible to work from home.
mhm.
So it's definitely very job dependent. But in an ideal ceteris paribus world, I think going to the office certain amount of days and going remotely others is, I think that's the ideal scenario, just because it enables the best of both worlds. You can socialize, you can see other people, you can see other things, and you can stay at home and have your own comfort.
Hmm. Yeah, I what I can see is it will take some more time, maybe an year or two before the dust settles, and we are not there
Going
yet.
back to the first question, yeah, we do need more time. I do believe so.
We do need more time. Um, we are running up on time,
Yeah.
and I do not. I am respectful of your schedule. So, any closing comments you have?
No, just as you mentioned, we need more data. We need more time to actually figure it out a lot of stuff. But I think it's a very interesting topic that it like a lot of things are writing on this topic right now. If you saw that recent controversy with Tesla, with Elon Musk
Hmm.
just calling everyone back, and then some other companies just going the other way. So I think there's a lot of things going on. So I think the next months or couple of years are going to be very interesting from a psychological perspective, in
Hmm.
how we are heading or headed towards. But I do think I we are in a very interesting point in time, just because technology allows us to have this kind of conversation. Especially, for example, you're in India, I'm here in Guatemala. We're working in a way, and it's very interesting. So this point of time, I think it's the best time to talk about this, and it's how it's going to shape the world. I was talking to an architect not so long ago, and he was talking about how many new listings are going to prioritize like working spaces, whilst before they prioritized, I don't know, a walk-in closet. Now it's going to be like, oh yeah, they have study, or they have a study corner. I don't know, like it depends, but it's going to shape so many things more than just the jobs and the companies. It's going to shape architecture. It's going to shape hospitals. It's going to shape medical and mental health. So the repercussions are just enormous. So it's just very interesting from a psychological perspective.
Thank you so much,
No,
Gabriel.
thank you.
Thank you so
Oh, and
much.
thank you, of course. Thanks for the time. Thanks for the invitation.